today's video, I'm going to show you why everything you know about Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks is changing in 2025. After years of helping people happily retire, I've noticed that so many people miss these small updates made at the end of the year by the IRS. And these small updates, if you miss them, could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in compounded growth, or worse, even IRS tax penalties. So today we're going to go through one by one. I'm going to show you how to maximize these so you're ready for retirement. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. So up here on the screen, we have the major changes the IRS made to IRAs, 401ks, 457 workplace retirement plans. First couple ones, I'm not going to bore you. There's a lot of stuff here. There'll be a link to this webpage here if you want to read about it later in the show notes. The first couple ones here, before I dive into a summarized version and change our page, is just the IRS phase outs, right? Every year, there's only a certain amount of money you can make and still be allowed to take a deduction, right? Those phase outs generally increase with a cost of living adjustment each and every year. You'll see up here on the screens, those numbers expanded for both IRAs and 401ks, workplace retirement plans. Nothing else really big and worth mentioning. You have a little bit of what's also referred to as the saver's credit, which allows you to take a tax deduction. Any amount above that, you don't get the credit. So let me hop over to the more important piece here. There'll also be a link to this in our YouTube video, right at the bottom in the comment section. So first one I want to really point your attention to. There's no big changes between Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, in terms of your contributions. So from 2024 to 2025, unchanged. $7,000 for individuals under the age of 50, $8,000. Now you get that catch-up contribution of $1,000 for anyone over age 50. That remains unchanged. Those are still true last year as they are this year. For 401ks, 403bs, 457s, you get a $500 bump in contributions. Great. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. You've always had the $7,500 catch-up contribution. This is for individuals over the age of 50, which is great. You now can take your contribution from $23,500 to now $31,000. That's a big jump. You get your $7,500 extra contribution. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. You have this year what's known as this super catch-up contribution. This only applies to individuals who are age 60, 61, 62, and 63. And instead of the $7,500 contribution catch-up limit, you now get a $3,750 additional contribution to $11,250. That was just passed this year. I snuck it in with the Secure Act 2.0. And so because it's so new, a lot of workplace retirement plans don't automatically account for this if you're over the age of 60. So this is a really big deal that you want to make sure you pay attention to when you're setting your annual contribution limits for the year. If you're 60, 61, 62, or 63, you can contribute an extra $3,750. Two really big changes that I want to bring to your attention. First, Roth 401ks no longer require a required minimum distribution. That's right. Now, traditional IRAs, that still applies. But most plans now are required to have both a traditional and a Roth option within a 401k, 457, 403b. Now, legislation previous, right, per the Secure Act, said we still had to take required minimum distributions out. So that meant when we turned 72, 73, 75, depending on when your birthday fall, any of that pre-tax money had to be taken out systematically over time. There was a formula, the December 31st balance divided by the IRS life expectancy table, and you had to take that out. Now, that creates a big tax headache in retirement because what it does is all that money that you have to take out, that's all ordinary income. Now, that's not the case with Roth 401ks. They used to require required minimum distribution, but starting in 2025, that's no longer the case. So really important. If we're over age 50 and we're watching this video preparing for our retirement, we want to start thinking about you today, but also you 5, 10, 15 years from now to figure out what account makes more sense for you to contribute to. Because if we can get ahead of that required minimum distribution now, that's going to A, reduce your taxes in retirement, but B, we may not have to be as diligent or as aggressive with Roth conversion. So remember, no Roth 401k RMD required any longer. Now, number two, this passed last year, but it's really beginning to gain steam and notoriety. Any remaining 529 college funds can be rolled over into a Roth IRA up to $35,000. So you sent your kids to college, they got a scholarship, there's leftover money, whatever the situation is, you can now, as long as you have earned income, start to move that money into a Roth IRA. Now, you could do that for yourself, you could do that for your spouse, you could do that for your kids. Whatever your life plan and your legacy and what that looks like happens to be, this is a great addition to boost your retirement savings, right? If there's, let's say, $70,000 left, you and your significant other can each contribute up to $35,000 into a Roth IRA over the course of 5 to 6 years up to the annual limits. Per the Secure Act 2.0, right, individuals 50 years of age or older earning more than $145,000 have to make their catch-up contribution, right? That's the $7,500 or $11,250 if you're age 60 through 63 into a Roth account, right? Let me repeat that for you. Over the age of 50, starting next year, you have to make your catch-up contribution into a Roth account, not a pre-tax account, right? There could be penalties for that. Now, we'll dive into it in another video of what it looks like and the impact, and we'll go through a case study. But that additional $7,500 or $11,250, that portion has to be in a Roth account if you make more than $145,000 starting next year. All right, so let's take a look at Jack and Michelle. They're 61 years old, on the doorstep of retirement, $1.2 billion saved and accumulated so far. So they're doing everything right. Now, they have a couple options. They can continue to work, and that's going to give them the ability to spend more in retirement, or they can retire today. And what I want to showcase is just the difference side by side. If they work longer and they implement some of those changes that we just talked about, the positive impact that can have on their retirement. So let's go ahead. I'm going to move myself over here. We can look at what they've been able to accumulate. Bonus points if you pick up on it, that 529 plan, they're in their 60s, right? Their kids are already through school and postgraduate, so they have a surplus left over. We got to figure out what to do with it. You can see they have some Roth IRAs, right? We have a lot of options, okay? So when we take a look at their case, right, again, 61, doing a great job. They have retirement flexibility, right? They both earn a really good amount. They're at the peak of their careers. They're going to take Social Security right around 67. So again, options. Now they're living within their means. They spend about $7,000 a month. And in retirement, they want to try and step into that same style of living and spend for the first 10 to 15 years in retirement about $10,000 a year, or in other words, about $1,000 a month on travel, and also build in any type of long-term care or end-of-life expenses in their final 3 years. So these are the variables and factors, and what we're going to be able to take a look at when we look at whether or not that they can afford to retire. If they want to retire today and maintain the same standard of living, it gets really tough, I'll be honest, right? There's got to be some sacrifices that they're going to have to be willing to make to be able to pull that off. And so when we look at maximum retirement here in the middle column, well, if we cut our spending by about $1,000 to $1,500 a month, it's doable. It still gets really thin, more than I would like in terms of our probability of success. But with some of these changes, if they just work 1 or 2 years longer, and what we saw from this screen that I shared earlier is not only do we have this super catch-up contribution, which allows them to contribute an extra almost $4,000 a year each for up to 4 years, right? So that's $15,000 for those 4 years in total, multiplied by the both of them. That's $30,000 collectively. If we put that in a Roth, we don't touch that for 10 to 15 years. We have our compounded growth at 5 to 8%, somewhere in that range. That's well over $100,000 difference just by working a couple extra years and getting that bonus. And number two, we talked about it. They have the unused 529 plans that they can roll over. So what we're going to see here, and the difference of why it's so successful, on the left-hand side, what we're going to see is just what they're doing today, right? Which, nothing wrong with it. They're saving into the 401k. They're maxing it out, right? We have the joint brokerage. But now on the right-hand side, what if they increase those 401k contributions and they start moving that money from the 529s into the Roth? It's a big difference. And now what we're going to see here is if they're retiring at 62, 63, we have 2 to 3 years worth of just putting away $80,000 to $90,000 a year extra rather than pulling that out. And when we look at the long-term impact on cash flow, right, our base facts, doing the exact same thing today versus making those changes, working an extra year or two, that's where you're going to see that big positive impact, right? Is because moving $70,000 over from a 529 to a Roth and that extra $15,000 each, $30,000 total over those 3 to 4 years from the 401k, right? So when we look at that, that's over $100,000 worth of savings that they're able to implement. And that is a huge difference maker on the overall success of their plan. Now, I hope you were able to see the big difference that just 2 or 3 changes could have on an overall retirement plan. And if you're over the age of 60, now is the time to make some of those incremental changes. So many times I see in my profession, people aren't aware that they exist, right? They don't know how to take advantage of these rules. They don't know if it applies to them, or we don't do enough proactive tax planning to understand where our taxes are today and where they will be in the future, right? Oftentimes our taxes are going to be lower in the future. So we have to be able to take a look at required minimum distributions. Does it make sense to fund our brokerage versus our Roth versus our IRA or 401k? So it's really important that we take advantage of these rules. And as you can see, ignoring these changes can have a significant impact on your retirement. In my experience, far too many people do not take advantage of this, right? And so to be able to take a deeper look into this, right, I'm offering a complimentary one-time one-on-one call where we get the opportunity to review your plan, look at your documents, understand what you're saving, where you're saving, if you're on track for retirement, and show you how you can optimize your retirement. There's going to be a link to book a call on my calendar at the bottom of our show notes here. Go ahead and click on that, and we'd love to chat with you and see how we can help.